lesson this morning comes from Ruth 1 through 18. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in a country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech, his wife's name Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrates from Bethlehem, Judah, and they went to Moab and lived there. Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah and the other Ruth. After they had lived there about 10 years, both sons also died, and Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband. When she heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them, Naomi and her daughter-in-law prepared to return home from there. With her 2 daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living and set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah. Then Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness. May the Lord show kindness to you, as you have shown to the dead and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest and home of another husband." Then she kissed them, and they wept aloud, and she said to them, "We will go back with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who would become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters, it is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has gone out against me." At this they wept again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. "Look," said Naomi, "your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her." But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if anything but death separates you and me." When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her.
When I was in seminary, my Old Testament professor says there's one word you have to know about the Old Testament, the single most important word in the Old Testament, and it is Hesed. Hesed means the consistent, ever faithful, relentless, constantly pursuing, lavish, extravagant, unrestrained, furious love of God. Whoa. I was just thinking about it. And this is Hesed. This is the single most powerful love in the world. It's about loving with all our hearts and souls and minds and minds. It's about love with everything we've got and everything God's got. And we're seeing it today. We see it every now and then. I know the news loves to tell us how bad things are. If you listen to the news, you think we are living in the worst times ever. Have you ever tried to use a dial phone? We live in better times. We do. It's just the news has to keep telling us how bad it is, how bad it is, how bad it is. I think it's because the big heads have to keep the commercials from slapping together. That's the only reason. The fact is we live in remarkable times, and we've seen improvement even this last week. We have seen a remarkable engagement in love. Monumental love, governmental love. It is possible. You know, FEMA has gotten a lot of bad press over the years. Remember New Orleans? FEMA was charged with the job of working out an evacuation plan for New Orleans because they knew that someday there might be a flood and you had to get everyone out. So their evacuation plan was real simple. Everyone get in their cars and drive like hell. Unfortunately, people in the lower Ninth Ward didn't have cars. So they had to stay in hell. And we watched the plastic of America be peeled back to show the third world country underneath. And FEMA wasn't there. And FEMA couldn't organize. I got up close and personal with FEMA when we were down in Holly, had the tornado come through. So I got to meet some of the FEMA guys. I found out two things. First of all, they are honest, legitimate, hardworking bureaucrats. These guys were not sloughing their job because their job was not to save everybody. Their job was to assess the situation and then to report back to the president and tell the president what the situation was for a high-up decision on whether it was disaster relief or not. But what's happened this last week is unbelievable. FEMA was active before the disaster hit. They had organized the Salvation Army and the Red Cross and UMCOR and Seventh-day Adventist Relief and all of the first responders. They were ready. They had stockpiled food and water and gasoline and generators. They were ready, and they called out the military and the National Guard and the firefighters and the policemen, and they were able to respond as quickly as possible. And I hate to say only 150 deaths, or whatever the number is. Every death is a tragedy, but when you're talking about millions and millions of people being inundated by that flood and their lives torn to shreds by that flood, something went right. As right as it could. I call it Hesed. I call it the government finally figuring out that our job is not to save money, and our job is not to just fight somebody across halfway across the world. Our job is to protect the people of the United States. That's you and me, the ones who vote for them, the ones who support them. And that's where our taxes go, is to protect us with good roads, strong bridges, a power system that isn't holding up right now to the new weather situations and to the disasters that come along. That is how we work together, loving our neighbors as ourselves. There's an old saying among the rabbis, old question, how can you recite the whole of the Torah, all 613 laws, while standing on your head? Well, that was basically the question they asked Jesus, because that's the answer that you give. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind and might. And the second part is not like unto it. The second part is a strategic plan on how to do that. Coming to church, bringing your money, bowing, standing, singing, all of that's wonderful worship. But to love God, you must love your neighbor as yourself. That's how it's done. The prophets were not saying that God has this desire to rain fire and brimstone on everybody. They were saying you haven't loved your neighbor as yourself. In the New Testament, John said, but if a person has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need, and that person does not care, how can the love of God remain in him? And James put it very succinctly, you must be doers of the word, not only the hearers who mislead themselves. Faith without action is dead. Hesed is not just an idea. It is the consistent, ever faithful, relentless, constantly pursuing, lavish, extravagant, unrestrained, furious love that we are to show to God through other people. And that's what the whole story of Ruth is about. Ruth is called the most Hesed book in the Bible. And let's watch a little clip from that.
Where now, Mother? Where will we go?
There's only one place I can go. Back to Bethlehem. But you, my daughter...
I shall go with you.
Oh, why should you come with me? You are pretty and young, and many a good man of Moab would wish to marry you. And your mother and father who love you even as I. We'll want you by them to comfort their old age. Return, Orpah.
I will do as you bid me.
Farewell, Ruth, and may the Lord bless you.
I'm not returning.
And where will you go?
With you?
With me? To Bethlehem? It's a long and hazardous journey. And who knows, you might even be pursued. And then a Moabitess in Bethlehem might not be welcome. You must go back with Orpah, my daughter, and may the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. I entreat you to return.
Entreat me not to leave you, or to keep from following you. For where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God.
Nothing wrong with Orpah. People want to call her Oprah, which was actually Oprah's name was Orpah, but no one could pronounce it right. Orpah went home. She took care of her family. She was with her people, and that's perfectly all right. But Ruth took the step. She took the step of Hesed into a journey of the unknown. She chose to love Naomi, who was a very bitter woman. If you've read the book, you know that Naomi is never over her bitterness. God dealt her dirty. And she never quite gets over that. But Ruth loves her anyway. How many of you have had somebody in your life that you've had to love anyway? That's Hesed. And it's a journey. It's a journey to where you don't know. Ruth was going to a different land, a different people, probably a different language. And she didn't know how it was going to happen, but she went because she loved Naomi anyway. And Jesus calls us on such a journey. We are called to follow Christ. And there's no place we're going. There's no station at the end of the road that has a big sign that says, I found it. No, it's the journey itself. It's walking the road. It is taking each day and discovering new things, new friends, new possibilities. It is loving people you never knew you'd meet, for reasons you never knew you had, and asking forgiveness for things that you never knew you'd mess up. It's living life on the road, and it's following Christ. Christ says, no, I am not talking about Twitter. When I meant literally follow me. Go where I am going. You can start at any point, but every step you take takes you over the edge and around the corner into a brand new world. And that is the power. We follow, Moses followed God into the Holy Land. Ruth followed God by loving Naomi into Bethlehem. The exiles followed on their journey away from home and then back home. And Jesus leads us on a journey that takes us to the worst place ever and beyond, to the best possibility ever. That's what it's about. Let's say it again, what it means. The consistent, ever faithful, relentless, constantly pursuing, lavish, extravagant, louder, unrestrained, furious love of our God.